Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 15th of January, 2020, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish.
Well, we're going to start off with Boris. We're going to start off with Boris in Iran. But the question as we work through this is, what is Boris doing? Is he turning into Donald Trump in front of our very eyes? So here is Boris, Monsieur Macron and Merkel. They, of course, are the heads of state of the E3, and the E3 is the British, French, German foreign offices all working together with respect to Iran over the last couple of years on the JCPOA and so on. Now, on the 12th, which was Monday, which was Sunday, this statement was released by them, by the heads of state of the E3. We, the leaders of France, Germany and the United Kingdom, share fundamental common security interests along with our European partners. One of them is upholding the nuclear non-proliferation regime and ensuring that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, plays a key role in this respect. Together, we've made clear our regret and concern at the decision by the United States to withdraw from the JCPOA and to reimpose sanctions on Iran. And they said that despite increasingly difficult circumstances, we have worked hard to preserve the agreement. All remaining parties to the JCPOA, China, France, Germany and Russia, and the United Kingdom and Iran, with the EU's coordinator, have stated their continuing commitment to preserve the JCPOA. That seems pretty clear, doesn't it?
Pretty clear in lots of ways, Mike. I think there's some interesting questions. What's actually going on here?
Well, it became less clear yesterday on Breakfast Time TV because Boris Johnson was being interviewed by the BBC. Here he is. Well, he said that the problem with the JCPOA is that from the American perspective, it's a flawed agreement negotiated by Obama. If we're going to get rid of it, let's replace it. Let's replace it with the Trump deal. That's what we need to see. That would be a great way forward. President Trump is a great deal maker by his own account and by many others. Let's work together to replace the JCPOA and get the Trump deal done instead. So what's going on? Because Boris clearly arguing against himself here. Now, don't believe that Boris and Donald Trump have discussed this. This was something that he dropped out of the air on the news yesterday, on Breakfast News yesterday, and it was repeated at lunchtime, repeated on the website and on the BBC website and so on. So is he turning into Donald Trump, where he says one thing one day, changes his mind and does something the next day? Well, this is a very good question, because yesterday, after he had given this interview to the BBC, then there was another joint statement, this time from the E3, the foreign ministers of the E3 rather than the heads of state, and they said, we, the foreign ministers of France, Germany and the United Kingdom, share fundamental common security interests along with our European partners. They went on to say the JCPOA is a key achievement of multilateral diplomacy and the global non-proliferation architecture. We negotiated the JCPOA with the conviction that it would decisively contribute to building confidence in the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program, as well as to international peace and security. They said, together we've stated unequivocally our regret and concern at the decision by the United States to withdraw from the JCPOA and to reimpose sanctions on Iran. They finished off by saying we're grateful to the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China, with whom we remain in close consultation, for joining us in our common endeavour to preserve the JCPOA. So this is really quite spectacular. It's impossible to know who is actually in charge, it seems, because one lot are saying one thing and another lot are saying something else, and very much similar to what's going on in the United States.
Confusion can be good, Mike, because while we are confused as to what's happening, of course, behind the scenes, the deep, dark policies can be put in place with nobody able to really understand what's happening. We discussed the training of the civil service on Monday, where we showed that what we now have is a sort of semi-corporate structure. It's not the civil service as it used to be. It's now tied in with big industry, but the picture to the public is confusing. So This to me is smokescreen, and something very dirty is going on behind the scenes.
Well, it doesn't end there because, of course, Donald Trump has been very critical of the mainstream press in the United States. He's had good reason to do so, and they've been messing about with various things like briefings and so on. And it seems that is going on in this country as well, all of a sudden. So on January the 6th, then Boris Johnson decided that the press briefings would no longer be held at Westminster, that they would be moved to Downing Street. And the Society of Editors is extremely concerned about this. They've written this open letter to Boris Johnson. Well, it's quite a long letter signed by all the various editors, 33 of them, I believe. They're saying that basically Boris Johnson has moved the two daily briefings from the official spokesman from the House of Commons to Downing Street. This is causing all kinds of problems, not least the fact that journalists are having to negotiate with Downing Street security staff to even get in to the briefings. They're not allowed to bring their mobile phones anymore. So they have written this letter of complaint. They said in the press release that went alongside this, while the industry welcomes moves by the government to provide access to more of the administration's advisors, very American language, there are real concerns that the changes in their present form will hamper the workings of a free press. I would hope that a government that has spoken of supporting a free press and freedom of expression will be prepared to consult further on how the lobby system can be changed without damaging the important role the media has in scrutinising the workings of Parliament. So the Society of Editors extremely concerned. The BBC and ITV didn't sign this letter, but this is mainly the print media, and also George Osborne, who of course is editor of the Evening Standard. He didn't sign it, but he got his managing editor to sign it instead. More Trump-like behaviour. This time
closing down any scrutiny by the press. We can be very scathing about the press sometimes here in UK because they're not doing their job. They're not doing full investigation. Now what have we got? A little bit of squealing. They're beginning to understand that actually they're being squeezed out. The BBC, the main propaganda machine, continues to roll, but others who are trying to do some reporting are now being squeezed out. So we've got an unaccountable Boris Johnson, we've got an unaccountable civil service, we've got an unaccountable cabinet office. We're no longer in a democracy, but they're going to stand on the world stage and lecture Iran on what it should and shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Well, of course, the other thing we need to remind people of, and I'm sorry because this is not a particularly pleasant topic, but we have a Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who described expenditure investigating child abuse as money that had been spaffed. That's his language for ejaculated up the wall. This is the standard of Britain's Prime Minister. And let's immediately bring in the BBC, because the BBC crowing yesterday that the reports come out about the failure of Manchester City Council and other authorities, including Greater Manchester Police, to protect children. The BBC particularly crowing because the report itself starts off by effectively congratulating the BBC on its investigations into child abuse. But of course, this is the same BBC that covered up the activities of Jimmy Savile when he was doing his dirty deeds paid by the BBC. But let's have a look through this report, and UK Column is going to say this is not all it seems. So first of all, credit where it's due, and the Telegraph here in its article with a picture of Maggie Oliver, absolutely right. And we're going to say, well, of course, it's not the BBC that people should be congratulating. It's very brave whistleblowers, police whistleblowers in particular, Maggie Oliver and John Wedger, and several others who have finally started to force the lid off child abuse in UK. But of course, the Telegraph headline here is getting into the political agenda because it's an Asian grooming gang free to roam the streets. And indeed, many of the vast majority of the men in this case were indeed Asian, but the people running the child protection system and failing in their duty, of course, were not Asian. So there's many questions to be asked, but let's just get a feel for this case. It's not being reported. These points are not being reported in any press outlets. So this is from Manchester City Council. This is the sort of thing you get on their website when you go and have a look about what you should do about child abuse. And this is the old line, Mike, trust us. If you've got information, come to us and tell us what's happened to you. We will protect you. We will ensure that there's anonymity. We will take action. But of course, what has emerged in this report and in many other places elsewhere is that once information has come forward, either nothing happens or those people, the victims, are not protected. But here it is. Here's the big green report. It's an independent assurance review of the effectiveness of multi-agency responses to child sexual exploitation in Greater Manchester. This is part one. There's more to come. An assurance review of Operation Augusta. Now, Operation Augusta was Greater Manchester Police investigation into abuse of youngsters, particularly by Asian men. We can see here that the authors are Malcolm Newsome, CBE, and a Gary Ridgway, and there's the embargo on the bottom. So this was hot news, but I'm going to say just remember those two names. Well, when you get inside, and this is not mentioned at all by the so-called mainstream press, we get a huge caveat. And what does that caveat say? Well, effectively, it says this: the report is independent. We always get a sense of reassurance, don't we, Mike, when we see that. This report is independent. We'll be seeing exactly how independent it is in a minute. There is no check of accuracy or completeness of information provided.
Oh.
Now, I read this with great interest because a report has been produced, which is now being blasted out over the media in UK. But apparently there wasn't any check of accuracy or completeness of information provided. In my previous professional career, I wonder what would happen if I'd produced the odd report just casually saying, well, here's the report, but can't actually vouch for whether it's accurate or I've checked the information I've used.
A bit difficult in some kind of military action to be taking that.
Well, possibly. We're laughing, but of course this is extremely serious once you start to pull it apart. And then it says, for the avoidance of doubt, no responsibility or liability is or will be accepted by Imprana Limited and GKA partnerships in relation to the release of this report, and any such liability is expressly disclaimed. So somebody there in a big hurry to make sure that if a few questions are asked, it's nothing to do with us.
So where's the accountability there?
Well, we're going to sort of ask about that. So let's have a look at the assurance team, and this is an interesting expression. It's an assurance report. Who are they assuring? They're certainly not assuring the victims of abuse, the survivors of abuse. It gets very woolly, but let's have a look. Here's Malcolm Newsome, experienced childcare expert with extensive experience of providing diagnostics, interventions and improvement support to a range of councils across the country. In October 2014, the Secretary of State for Education appointed him. Now, I'm not going to go on through it. I'm going to encourage people to read this themselves. This man is a government man. There's no question of it. He has been brought in supposedly to improve failing authorities in the childcare thing, but huge amount of controversy around him. And he's supported here by a police officer, a former police officer, Gary Ridgway, who has been praised for achieving good results in investigating child sexual exploitation. So I'm not going to challenge Mr. Ridgway at all, but Malcolm Newsome, we say, who is this man? And we can start to ask a key question: how independent is he in order to investigate the government's own system for protecting children? Well, I went and had a little look at Imprana Limited and GKA partnerships. Encourage viewers and listeners to do it themselves as well. Here's GKA partners, and we've got a Gareth Leslie Johnson. don't know much about that name, but I was intrigued that it's a risk management consultant. So who is worried about the amount of risk? Is that the team that produced the report? Are they worried about their own risk? Or is this Greater Manchester Council and the police worried about their risk from what's printed in the report? And if you go the other side, here's Imprana Limited, and there happens to be a Malcolm Newsom involved, and I'm going to guess that this is the same man. It's the same name, it's the same company. But let's have a look at this individual. Well, we're going back here to 2011, and here's the Daily Mail. The temps paid up to £1,250 a day by council that's slashing hundreds of jobs. So the headline is absolutely right. Kent County Council getting rid of people hand over fist, putting together a plan to get rid of about 300 people altogether, and they were paying a number of consultants, including the man we're interested in, £1,250 a day. So it says the most highly paid temp is Families and Care Director Malcolm Newsom, who cost the council £1,250 a day, followed by Alistair Pettigrew. So this is a very interesting man altogether. And I've got another report here from the Peterborough Telegraph, and it's saying that Malcolm Newsom could earn a salary of more than £230,000 a year in 12 months, staying on as the interim director of Children's Services. Now, is a man who's in a job like that as a result of a hand in government, is he going to criticise the government? Possibly, I don't know, but it seems interesting. He's a proven track record of turning around failing children's services, so that's good. And there's a consultancy firm mentioned there, MCBN Management Consultancy, and the day rate there was £1,045. So he hit the headlines here after this amount of money was being paid to him. And then the council explained that they had a poor Ofsted report, but they complimented him. They said he's also been very open and transparent in his way of working, and he's helped us restore public confidence in the council. So that's good praise, and we'll put that up on screen to be fair, and we'll highlight that. He's been very open and transparent, has a very open and transparent way of working. So let's have a look at this one. This is Community Care, and they're talking about turmoil for Northamptonshire Children's Services as DFE appointed commissioner quits. This is where it gets interesting, Mike, because this is Mr. Newsom again. He disappeared without anybody really knowing why he'd gone. But there was interest in this man because he'd come under fire from Northamptonshire councillors over his, quote, lack of visibility and accountability.
So which is it? Is he open and transparent, or has he got lack of visibility and accountability?
Or does he go whichever way the wind blows and wherever the money comes from? So the DFE did not reply to questions as to the reason for Newsom's exit. A spokesperson said, we're making good progress with the creation of a new Children's Services Trust and are grateful to Malcolm Newsom for his role in transforming these services. We will be appointing a new commissioner before Malcolm leaves to finish this crucial work. Now, this is a little clue, I believe, to what is really going on, because this man is a change agent. He's changing council services for children into a trust. And my personal opinion, it's only my personal opinion, is as these trusts appear, actually the accountability declines and the transparency declines.
As has happened with the NHS?
As we've seen with the NHS, privatisation comes in, you don't know what you're dealing with. So we get that very early hook that maybe something special is happening. Let's have a look at the report. So I've entitled this one Multidisciplinary Teams, we're all in it together. But look at what the report actually says. The team will report directly to the Deputy Mayor in relation to progress and outcomes. The Deputy Mayor has invited Joanne Roney, Chief Executive of Manchester City Council, and lead GMCA Chief Executive for Children, Jim Taylor, Chief Executive, Salford City Council and a former Director of Children's Services, and Debbie Ford, Assistant Chief Constable, Greater Manchester Police, to join her in providing governance and oversight of the exercise in the steering group. So this is the team investigating itself, Mike. We haven't got a separate secure investigation going on where the evidence is being carefully put to one side. What we've got is a gaggle of people working through their own mistakes, but don't worry, because everything is independent. So here we are. We assure the public we've investigated ourselves fully. Throughout our review, we've shared our findings with Greater Manchester Police and Manchester City Council. Greater Manchester Police has confirmed the following additional information, and it's a love affair. They're all loving each other, swapping information, working in collaboration in order to get to the bottom of what they failed to do as a multidisciplinary team.
Good.
It could go straight from here onto Yes Minister or The Simpsons, I think. So let's carry on, because of course the report does produce some very good information in that it says in a lot of places in a lot of detail that a great number of children ages 12 up to 16, 17 horrifically abused, prostituted. I'm not going to describe what was done to these children, but look at what it says at 6.82. We also cannot offer assurance that the risks the identified adults presented to children were appropriately dealt with by either Greater Manchester Police or Manchester City Council. But all the evidence they uncover in the report is already being shared with the people who failed. In summary, although there was significant information held by both Manchester City Council and Greater Manchester Police on individuals who posed a risk to children, we can offer no assurance that appropriate action was taken. This theme is repeated through the report, and it's very clear they knew the abuse was going on. The City Council did nothing. The police closed down an investigation where they were starting to do something, and the multidisciplinary child protection team failed at every level. That's the politest thing you can say. Or we had malfeasance in public office where they were turning a blind eye to crime.
So we've now seen the same patterns in Nottingham, in Rotherham, in Rochdale, and all these other places in the Midlands and the north of England. And yet we're still getting reports like this, and no lessons have been learned, it seems.
No lessons have been learned, except we can learn the lesson that if you follow it through, Mike, the pattern of the cover-up of the failure is always the same. The information is there. The child protection teams in the council don't do their job. The police don't do their job. The coroners don't do their jobs. Of course, in general, the politicians don't do their job. Andy Burnham stepped in at this point, but the pattern is that politicians will not get involved. The Home Office won't get involved. The Prime Minister says, well, there's no abuse going on. It's just money spaffed up the wall.
But there is a common theme through all of this, and that is common purpose.
Common purpose, the integration of the authorities into a leadership team where transparency goes out of the window. I think we're going to find deeper common purpose connections, but we'll keep our viewers informed of that. Let's have a look at this. This is page 18. In summary, we have found through our analysis that although there was significant information held by both Manchester City Council and Greater Manchester Police on some individuals who potentially posed a risk to children, we can offer no assurances that appropriate action was taken. This is repeated over and over again. And I am going to say that although I've started out by being critical of at least one of the authors of the report, there is an exposure of child abuse and failures, covers up, of child abuse in the report. So where does it get interesting? Well, Here's something about terms of reference. Our terms of reference require us to make recommendations that help guide the future direction of the Greater Manchester response to child sexual exploitation. Now that's an interesting statement, Mike, because they haven't even got to the bottom of the failures. So how can they be proposing what the solutions are?
Well, the only way that I could imagine is if they had an idea of what the solution should be before they started writing the report.
Indeed. And now it gets really interesting, because now we can start to see that something fascinating is going on. Now here's Appendix B, and it says Manchester City Council asked the review team to include the following chronology. That's very nice. They didn't produce a list saying that 5 of the child abuse survivors felt they wanted to get their comments into the report. And if you read this pernicious little list, this is the City Council as a corporate body starting to protect its backside by going through a chronology, followed by the fact that really we're getting better. So here's the twist. The Manchester City Council text says, Achieving Change Together Act model, which focuses on a more collaborative approach to working with vulnerable young people to reduce their risks and enable them to feel more supported as well as protected. This approach has been pioneered in Wigan and Rochdale. It's been independently evaluated and found to have a significant. So now they're talking about new challenges and transformation and new ideas. And we'll call a halt on this because there's a lot more to say on it. We've got a crisis. The abuse of children was not dealt with properly, but luckily that is now going to allow them to change the whole format of children's social services into trusts, which I'm going to say are going to be even less accountable than the City Council and Greater Manchester Police. And that, I believe, is the objective of this report. And the secondary objective is to lure the public into thinking that the child abuse is simply the result of the Asian gangs. Meanwhile, of course, ICSA not fully investigating Westminster child abuse and the cover-up by British politicians. So Boris Johnson on the world stage lecturing Iran, Mike, I find it very distasteful.
I'll just mention this, that you know, the common purpose effect is at work here, and if anybody wants to get more on that and more on the background to that, we have a series of articles on the UK Column website called The Common Purpose Effect, written by Martin Edwards. Fantastic research and articles, so do go and read those. Now, if you like what we're doing here at the UK Column and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community. The various options for you to help us out there, and your help is much needed and much appreciated. We'll just mention also that tonight is the first UK Column monthly meeting of 2020. That'll be at the George in Plimpton, as usual, starting 7:30 or so.
Yeah, and I'll just add at this point, because it's probably an appropriate point, I have to be very guarded on what I say, but I can tell our audience I have a lot of people asking me on a weekly basis, daily, weekly basis, about Melanie Shaw. I can tell our audience that Melanie Shaw is doing extremely well. She's being very well looked after, but at the moment there are a number of extremely sensitive issues around her, which mean that we can't give further detail. But Melanie does want to thank everybody that's been sending her nice cards and letters, and we are doing our very, very best for her at the moment. I will say more when I can, but that's not at the moment.
Okay, let's head over to Brussels, and well, Ursula von der Leyen, the new president of the European Commission, was launching the Green New Deal yesterday. In Strasbourg rather, not Brussels. She called it the EU's man on the moon moment, this launch of this programme. It's fantastic stuff, 47.5 billion euros, 38 billion euros coming from the EU budget and 9.5 billion euros coming from partners, private organisations. And they're expecting that 47.5 billion euros to be leveraged up to 650 billion euros worth of investments. Yes.
I was just going to say, I hope the Man on the Moon project doesn't involve V2 rockets, because we've had a few problems with those in the past.
Well, we have. But anyway, Ursula said that she was going to be heading off to the European Council today to sell this to them. Now, of course, that might be a harder sell, because if you remember, in mid-December, EU leaders didn't manage to convince the EU27 to sign up to their objective to become carbon neutral by 2050. And the main fly in the ointment there was Poland, because of course Poland has a largely coal-based economy, and they certainly didn't want to sign up to that particular target. So the heads of state and government endorsed the objective at the time, while granting Poland an exemption. And they said that they would look at this situation again in June. But nonetheless, they're extremely excited, or Ursula's extremely excited to launch this. And of course, it's all, well, and she said that it's not about a sort of Ponzi scheme financial, thing, that there's much more to it than this. It's really exciting, and that it's a real Man on the Moon moment. But the question is it? And well, of course, we've got to remember that going back to mid-December, so Mark Carney, the governor of the Bank of England, was saying this: companies that don't adapt, including companies in the financial system, will go bankrupt without question. That's if companies don't adapt to the demand for getting involved in green projects. Now, 650 billion euros is certainly plenty of money if the EU can manage to leverage things up to that level for private companies and financial institutions to get involved in this, whatever it is. So let's look at one of the biggest financial institutions on the planet, and that is BlackRock. Now, if you were looking at BlackRock's website last week, this is pretty much what you would have seen. Investor Pulse, we asked 4,000 people, blah, de blah. That was last week. Yesterday, alongside Ursula, the website was changed, and well, here it is, making sustainability our standard. Now, BlackRock, of course, they manage $7 trillion of other people's money. It's not a small institution, but they're putting sustainability at the center of how they invest. So they certainly won't be on the wrong side of Mark Carnage's threats to go out of business if they don't get involved in these types of things. So if you were looking closely, as that scrolled up the screen there, you would have seen mention of the letter from their chief executive, Larry Fink. Well, here's the first couple of paragraphs of that letter. It's called A Fundamental Reshaping of Finance. Well, he's basically saying that there's going to be a significant reallocation of capital away from the carbon-based economy to green investments. He said, because capital markets pull future risk forward, we will see changes in capital allocation more quickly than we see changes to the climate itself. In the near future, and sooner than most anticipate, there will be a significant reallocation of capital, and we're on the edge of a fundamental reshaping of finance. So, Boris Johnson said that, and in fact Theresa May before him said that Britain was going to be leading the way on this issue, becoming carbon neutral by 2050. But it looks like Ursula has got the jump on the UK at the moment. She's ploughing ahead with this, but with the enthusiasm of the central bankers, it looks like the financial system is ploughing ahead with it as well. It's very exciting.
Very exciting, and a bit like the V2, very dangerous, Mike, because when I read, I've got it on my screen here, isn't it? But awareness is rapidly changing, and I believe we're on the edge of fundamental reshaping of finance. And these are completely unaccountable people sitting in their rooms in the investment banks, Bank of International Settlements, wherever it's going to be, making these decisions. And this is how the control of the politicians is carried out.
Absolutely.
Well, let's jump back on green issues to Extinction Rebellion. And we wanted a report on this a couple of days ago, but there was too much going on. But very, very important series of reports that, of course, the dear old BBC produce, because they are fully backing Extinction Rebellion. But the police had labelled Extinction Rebellion as an extremist group. But oh dear, within no time at all, this was just a terrible mistake. A little bit upsetting, Mike, because of course we rely on counter-terrorism police to keep us safe, and it's a little bit worrying that they can make silly mistakes because people die when you make silly mistakes in terrorism. So let's have a look at it. But you had to track down the source of the police report that was being talked about in the press here, because it disappeared from the website. From the internet very quickly.
Oh, it did very quickly. Once it was in the mainstream press, it disappeared almost immediately. It was practically impossible to find, and in fact, the only version of it that we were able to get was from Google's cache.
From Google's cache. Okay, so we're going to show a bit of that in a minute, but this was the Oxfordshire Safeguarding Children's Board. So this is the original document which referred to this southeastern counter-terrorism police report, which stated that Extinction Rebellion was an extremist organisation. Freudian slip there. Let's also remember, in light of the report we've just done about the abuse in Manchester, that here we've got another one of these safeguarding boards. So you have local authorities sitting down with the police. They're all working together, they're all in bed together, no separation of powers. And we've quickly seen that 1 minute the safeguarding board is going along with the fact that Extinction Rebellion is an extremist organisation. The next minute, oh dear, we've made a terrible mistake. So this is what the safeguarding document said. Southeast Counter-Terrorism Policing have produced the attached reference guide, Safeguarding Young People and Adults from Ideological Extremism. The guide is for practitioners in regular direct contact with young people or members of the public. It is also relevant to managers, senior officers and safeguarding leads at all levels of local authorities. It's designed to help you recognise when young people or adults may be vulnerable to extreme or violent ideologies. Identification of any one of the signs presented here in isolation may not be indicative of vulnerability or radicalisation. However, in combination or in circumstances where they do not fit, they may indicate an individual at risk. So this wasn't a woolly statement, Mike. They were fully on to the fact that the police had identified it as an extremist organisation, and they understood why. So this is the document that UK Column, Mike, was able to find on the internet. It just states official, but this is the document from Southeast Counter-Terrorism Policing. It's entitled Safeguarding Young People and Adults from Ideological Extremism, a quick reference guide, and it was actually dated November 2019. So what did this thing have to say? Well, it had a chunk on Extinction Rebellion, said what you might see and hear, group logo, propaganda materials, participation in direct action or training, and a desire to be arrested for acts of civil disobedience. There are two paragraphs which we'll pick up on for simplicity. It says, who are they? Extinction Rebellion, a campaign encouraging protest and civil disobedience to pressure governments to take action on climate change and species extinction. And it also said this, why are they a threat? An anti-establishment philosophy that seeks system change underlies its activism. The group attracts to its events school-aged children and adults unlikely to be aware of this. While non-violent against persons, the campaign encourages other law-breaking activities. So this was totally in line with the UK Column reports, where we held documentation showing that Extinction Rebellion was calling for adults and school-aged children to break the law. And when we sent our evidence to the Department of Education counter-extremism team, they simply refused to take any action. But the police produced this report. Now they're backing off, Mike.
Well, the police are backing off under pressure, but the fact is they had this organisation absolutely identified for what it is, because in the first sentence there, why are they a threat? An anti-establishment philosophy that seeks system change underlies its activism. The key point about Extinction Rebellion is that it's not really about the climate change issue, it's about the changing the system of governance. So they have identified that it seeks system change, and that is their key motivation, not the climate change issue. And they're also identifying the fact that adults and children are unlikely to be aware of this. So actually, Southeast counter-terrorism policing had this bang on the money.
Indeed, and we as UK Column have had it bang on the money because we'd also shown another document produced by a former head of SO15, the police counter-terrorism branch, and in that document on Extinction Rebellion, he said it was an extremely dangerous organisation seeking to overthrow the government. But all of a sudden, Southeast Police have backtracked, which is surprising. Let's have a look at what Detective Chief Superintendent Kath Barnes had to say in the reports that the police had made a terrible mistake. So she said this: "I'd like to make it quite clear that we do not classify Extinction Rebellion as an extremist organisation." That is of deep concern. The inclusion of Extinction Rebellion in this document was an error of judgment, and we will now be reviewing all of the contents as a result. It was produced by CTPSE to assist our statutory partners, including police forces and government organisations, in identifying people who may be vulnerable as a result of their links to some organisations. The document was designed for a very specific audience who understand the complexities of safeguarding environment we work within and who have statutory duties under PREVENT. I'll put a label in here. What's the real statement? We've been warned to drop concerns about the extremist activities of Extinction Rebellion, and the general public is not bright enough to understand those concerns, and we're wiping the internet to hide the whole subject from them. That's what I think is going on here. But let's have a look. Here's Counter-Terrorism Policing Southeast. Please go and have a look at it. And I was very intrigued by this tweet that had been put out. Victoria police personnel, including police from Joint Counter-Terrorism Team Crime, will today be taking part in the Salisbury Novichok attack presentation by Thames Valley Detective Chief Superintendent Kath Barnes. So I think this is the same lady. Is it the same lady, or is this something completely different? But Thames Valley Police, and we're briefing on Novichok, but we can't even work out whether Extinction Rebellion is dangerous or not. Maybe they made a big mistake over Novichok.
Maybe they did.
Maybe they did. Well, this is what Neil Basu, Assistant Commissioner, Head of Counter-Terrorism Policing, has to say about Kath Barnes. As head of our counter-terrorism policing in the Southeast region, Kath Barnes has shown leadership and resilience that without doubt has helped keep this country safe. I'm so pleased that her relentless hard work and dedication has been publicly recognised by a Queen's Police Medal. It's very deserved. So can we actually rely now on the police to protect us against extremism? Because one minute they seem to know what's going on, the next minute they're rather confused.
Yes.
I think they've been lent upon because Extinction Rebellion is the darling of the government, because as Mike said, it's going to help press this change in the system of governance in UK. More on that in forthcoming UK Column News.
Absolutely. Now, sticking with the police, and well, I'm showing Greater Manchester Police here, but armed policing code has been strengthened according to the Home Office. And the Home Office saying that the Home Secretary's role in approving police use of less lethal weapons has been strengthened. And they're saying that this is the first change in firearms code for 17 years. It will meet one of the recommendations of the Granger inquiry. And this was the inquiry which followed the death of Anthony Granger, who was fatally shot by Greater Manchester Police. The Granger inquiry called for the process of using less lethal weapons to have greater clarity after they found that Greater Manchester Police had been using CS canisters without Secretary of State approval. Now, less lethal weapons, they say, approved for police use currently include tasers and attenuated energy projectiles. And the approval process has been strengthened by stating explicitly that Secretary of State approval is required for all new less lethal weapon systems and all significant changes to existing systems. So the new armed policing and police use of less lethal weapons code of practice is going to be published by the College of Policing, and it will replace the 2003 version. So that's all very interesting. In the meantime, a couple of days ago, we were going to mention this on Monday as well, the inquest into the death of a man in Cornwall who was tasered by police began on Monday. This was Mark Cole, who, well, he was going through some personal problems. He was self-harming. He certainly needed help. What he didn't need was to be tasered, and in fact, he died from that tasering and died in hospital, having been tasered by Devon and Cornwall police in Falmouth. So that's going on. That inquiry's going on at the moment, and at the same time then, police commissioners across England and Wales can start bidding as of Monday to equip officers with tasers as part of the Home Office drive to give more powers and tools to tackle crime. So on one hand, we've got the Home Secretary saying that that there's stronger approvals required in order to use so-called less lethal weapons. On the other hand, a new £10 million ring-fenced fund has been allocated to, and bidding has started to give more tasers to police forces across the country. Bidding is open on an online platform launched by the Home Office, and the forces will have to decide how much funding they apply for based on the threat and risk in their local area. Priti Patel was very excited about this. She said the rise in assaults on officers is appalling, which is why I'm providing funding to equip up to 10,000 more officers with taser. So I'm not quite sure. Again, there seems to be a bit of schizophrenia going on in Boris Johnson's government, because they don't seem to be able to decide exactly what their policy is in some of these areas.
No, but what we can see coming through is that the tools for a vicious police state are just coming into play on a daily basis. The police so incompetent they cannot deal with known abusers of children. The police so incompetent they're a little bit confused as to whether Extinction Rebellion is really criminal and extremist, even though it says it is. The police are a bit confused, but we need those tasers because quite possibly members of the public might challenge us and accuse us of being incompetent. This is deeply worrying. I noticed in that little video clip, Mike, that they're firing at the backs of the target. Yes. Is an individual who's facing away from them. I wonder if that's because one of the key risks of tasers is, of course, that if they hit you in the eye, you're going to either lose an eye or suffer extreme injury, and the same with a taser hitting you in the groin, particularly men. So what have we got going on here? We've got something utterly vicious, and people need to start asking their own politicians why this is happening. I'll just add here that we get asked more and more what people can do. We're constantly talking about writing these letters, a simple letter where you just have 2 or 3 sentences asking one simple question. Don't write a big long letter, but write these letters about the subjects that concern you. And if you receive a fob off, we would be very happy to take those letters because it's proof of the fob off. But of course, if you then go back and press your case, this brings the politicians under immense pressure. So lots that can be done. If you're concerned about tasers, get asking those questions. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Right.